Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Holly Pritchard, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Navy is Captain Michael Manfield. We welcome the veterans who have served, those who are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial, students on behalf of Glenunga International High School, Glenunga, South Australia, and scouts from the 1st Jerrabomberra Scout Troop. If you are able, please join in singing the National Anthem.
Australians, oh let us rejoice, for we are one and free. We've golden soil and wealth for toil, our home is got by sea. Our land abounds in nature's gifts of beauty, rich and rare. In history's page let every stage advance Australia fair. In joyful strains then let us sing, advance Australia fair.
The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him in Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 100,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war or on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Second Lieutenant Charles Teesdale Mayne. Charles Mayne was born on the 8th of November 1886 in North Adelaide. He was one of 4 children born to William James Mayne, a chemist, and his wife Rachel. Charles received his education at the Queen's School in Adelaide and later attended Adelaide University, where he studied to become a chemist like his father. He was an active member of the Holdfast Bay Yacht Club and volunteered in the medical corps of the local militia. When the First World War broke out in 1914, he was working as a chemist in his father's shop, Mayne and Son, in Adelaide. Charles Mayne enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 26th of April 1916. He was assigned to the 11th Field Ambulance as a staff sergeant and undertook a short period of training in Australia. He embarked for active service on the 31st of May that year, sailing from Adelaide on the troop ship Subic. Mayne disembarked in the English coastal town of Devonport on the 21st of July 1916. In November, he was sent to the front to work as a compounder making medicines. Mayne and his comrades saw out the bitterly cold winter running a dressing station in northern France. In early 1917, Mayne's unit moved to Belgium, where they took over the advanced dressing station. They found themselves caring for increasing numbers of casualties as Allied forces pursued the enemy to the Hindenburg Line. In April, Mayne undertook a short secondment to the 3rd Division School before being selected for officer cadet training. He returned to England in May 1917 for training courses at Cambridge until August, when he was commissioned as second lieutenant. Mayne returned to France in mid-September 1917 and was taken on strength of the 35th Battalion. The battalion was preparing for an attack on the strategically significant village of Passchendaele. Despite being preceded by days of heavy rain, the battle went ahead in the early hours of the morning under appalling muddy conditions. Lance Corporal Murray, who also took part in the fighting, described the scene. At 5:45 a.m., our guns opened up with a barrage. When I heard the rattle and roar, I felt like crying. I knew that the boys were going forward in semi-darkness. We got into the village and up onto the desired ridge, but were unable to advance and had to retire to within 300 yards of our starting point. All night long, the strafing continued while we lay in shell holes in the slush, mud, and rain. Several times I went up to my hips in mud and never in less than to the top of my boots. I am certain that without exaggeration, I was bogged to the hips 50 times at least, and crawling out of that alone knocks it out of a chap. Our stunt was hell while it lasted. By the time the 35th had withdrawn, they had suffered more than 400 casualties. Among the dead was Second Lieutenant Charles Mayne, who was killed by a shell at the beginning of the attack. One of his comrades wrote to Mayne's mother and told her, "All ranks in the battalion sorrow in their loss of a gallant leader and loved comrade. He made his sacrifice, bravely leading his men in the attack under conditions which called for and obtained from him the extreme of courage and determination." Despite having been buried by his comrades, Mayne's final resting place was lost during later fighting in the region. Today, he is commemorated among the missing on Menine Gate in Ypres, Belgium. Second Lieutenant Charles Mayne was 30 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Second Lieutenant Charles Teesdale Mayne, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
And the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them. Lest we forget.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.